the piece on all of the Power 4 college football programs and what they've done in the offseason, where they stand according Max Olson, Eli Letterman, and also our good friend, and all of them are, Adam Rittenberg, who joins us now on 365 Sports. Adam, thank you very much. How long did it take to put this one together?
Yeah, I think this is a new record for me, guys. Great to be with you, first of all. But I think we topped out around 25,000 words and took about a week and a half. Eli, Max are great teammates, and Bill Connolly contributed a little bit. But really, the three of us really grinded away to, it's just a lot of work in terms of looking up, who added who and who kept who. And that's really what it's a mix of. It's not just who had the most transfers added. It's, obviously who helped their team through the portal, but who also kept their team together and kept their coaching staff together. And so we really tried to emphasize that with our national top 10 and then also ranking the teams within the conference, that we just didn't, lean too much into, they grabbed a bunch of guys from the portal. That may not be a good thing. So it's really a mix of those areas that we tried to combine into a very lengthy piece.
So it's not so much you ranking the top 5, 10, 15, or 50 teams. It's ranking their offseason and what could eventually lead to that. And as you said, the offseason, you have LSU, Tech, Penn State, Oregon, and Clemson among your top 5. Was there anybody, and I mean, when you have 60-plus teams, was there anybody particular once you started looking at everything, you're like, oh, man, they really did a hell of a job. They had a lot better offseason than I thought.
Yeah, I think it was really the teams that we didn't hear about as much from the transfer portal perspective that maybe just added, 7 or 8 really good positions or really good pieces in certain areas. Like Penn State, for example, they were a team that rose in my mind off-season wise as it went along, and they were not a team that added a bunch of transfers. But the things that they did were that they kept their quarterback. Most playoff teams lost their quarterback. Penn State kept their quarterback. They kept their running backs, Singleton and Allen, who both are NFL caliber players. They lost their defensive coordinator and Tom Allen to Clemson, but arguably upgraded with Jim Knowles coming in from Ohio State and the national champions. And then they made some really important additions in the portal at the position that they needed, which was wide receiver. Penn State has been elite at pretty much every position over the last few years, and they've been deficient at the receiver position. So adding a guy like Trevor Pena, who again was a late entry into the portal just a few weeks ago from Syracuse, you bring him in and you've already added a few other pieces at that receiver spot. All of a sudden, that looks like a really, really good offseason, even though they did not add the number of players or maybe the caliber of players as LSU and Texas Tech did at the very top.
The three of you, or I guess 4 of you, including Bill Connolly, were not bullish on North Carolina. You ranked them 12 in your overall ACC rankings. What hasn't happened yet with North Carolina to outside of Jordan Hudson to make you excited?
Yeah, Jordan Hudson was not a portal addition for Carolina. We didn't factor that in. Although maybe we should have. It's an interesting team, right? Because it's just a hard one to handicap. There's just been so much change. And I think it's really important for everyone to remember that Carolina was not a complete disaster under Mac Brown. They were making bowl games. They were in the top 25 here and there. And so this isn't like a complete tear-down rebuild like it was at Colorado when they hired Deion Sanders and they completely bottomed out as a program. And so, again, you look at the number of players that they've lost. Yeah, they've brought in a lot of they've brought in a lot of players. I just don't know how many truly impact players they've brought in. Yes, they hired Bill Belichick and a new staff, but is that definitely an upgrade? I think that's the part where it's a bit tricky because there's so much mystery around that program. I mean, Gio Lopez, I think, will be a good quarterback for North Carolina, but quarterback really hasn't been the problem. And then they lose a guy like Atkinson who goes to Ohio State, and they lost a good linebacker to Penn State in the spring portal. Defense has been the issue there. So you look at who they've added. Right now, again, I'm not saying they won't be good players, but they don't jump out as no doubters like some of these other teams have added. So I think, again, it's just relative to everything that's gone on there and everything that's gone on in the league. I mean, Clemson, for example, doesn't add nearly the number of transfers that Carolina does, but they were able to keep their players, their roster together. They added a couple of transfers, which Dabo doesn't normally do, and then they bring in Tom Allen to fix the defense. So that's a much better offseason overall than what's gone on at UNC.
Adam, Texas Tech's offseason is well documented at this point. Cody Campbell's becoming like a household name for people who cover college football and follow along with college football. Number one portal class. I mean, you guys outlined all that they did. Coaching changes. I mean, how easy of a choice was Tech at number one in the Big 12? And just in your opinion, I mean, what else could they have done at this point?
Yeah, I think it wasn't that hard of a choice, but I think you could certainly have a bit of a debate, over the things that I've been discussing with you guys, in the sense like Arizona State, for example, doesn't add the number of transfers that Texas Tech does, but they won the conference. They were able to keep their coordinators. They were able to keep their quarterback and some of their other good players, obviously lose Scadaboo and some others to the NFL, but they had a really good offseason. But, Texas Tech was certainly, from a personnel standpoint, the team, or one of the teams that everybody was buzzing about in the Big 12, and certainly from a national standpoint. They were able to keep their GM who Notre Dame wanted. They were able to add two new coordinators who have the chance to upgrade their program. But we could be sitting here, guys, in a few months saying, wow, they brought so many new people into the program, and sometimes that mix doesn't work. Sometimes you would almost rather have a little bit more continuity. So that's the only place that I would pump the brakes a bit on Texas Tech. But let's face it, they needed to get better along the line of scrimmage. When I talked with Joey McGuire, and I'm sure you guys have, he really didn't hide from the fact that they were not good enough at the offensive line spots last year. And then defensive line-wise, to add a guy like Hunter from UCF and some of the other pieces there, they've gotten better at the places that they needed to. And if their quarterback can stay healthy and if these new play callers click, they should really be a team that's in the mix to win the Big 12 football.
Adam, is there somebody that is among, I guess you could say, alpha dogs or logos, blue bloods, who is in a crisis, and Oklahoma might be that team, I don't know, other than them, that is in a crisis that needs to have a really good year, or they're going to slip even into oblivion?
Well, I think Oklahoma, and again, they were a team that did thrive in the offseason, and they really had to. I mean, you certainly start with them because they've fallen off. Texas has bypassed them. That happened at the end of their time together in the Big 12, and it certainly accelerated here now that they're in the SEC. And so, OU absolutely has to take a step forward this year, or you really ask questions about whether Brent Venables is the right guy, and do they need a new vision there in Norman. Elsewhere, I think Wisconsin maybe isn't a blue blood, but we were used to them winning 10, 11 games for a long time. They've really fallen off, and they play a brutal schedule this year, and they've had a lot of guys going in and out of their program through the portal under Luke Fickell. It just hasn't worked out so far, so that would be one that I would mention. And then the SEC, I think LSU, even though we have them as the best offseason, now it's time to really deliver. And there really aren't any excuses anymore. There's staff continuity there. There's quarterback continuity with Garrett Nussmeier. They've upgraded at wide receiver and defensive back in some of the spots that they were a bit deficient. And now Brian Kelly has to go and deliver. And the beauty about that job, guys, is that the last three head coaches have won the national title. So if you don't win the national title, you're not succeeding ultimately at LSU. And they need to certainly take a step forward this season.
Adam, I'm looking at the leagues. Do you feel that one will be more competitive than the other, or is balance coming through? I mean, the ACC was kind of blah last year behind the top 3 or 4 teams. Was kind of that way in basketball too. The Big 12 looks super deep. Is there one league that maybe stands out for others as where we'll be watching week to week with bated breath, wondering who's going to contend?
Well, I think that the Big 12 seemingly every year is going to be like this. And you just keep adding to your list of teams that have a chance to contend for the Big 12 championship. And all you have to do is look at how last year unfolded, and a team that no one was giving a chance, Arizona State, goes out and wins the conference. But, they're in that mix. Iowa State, obviously Texas Tech is going to be a favorite or a popular pick to win the league. Kansas State, Baylor with who's coming back there, and the list goes on and on. I think there's great depth in the Big 12, but that's really nothing new. I think the SEC is fascinating in the sense that you have a lot of quarterbacks that are coming back in that conference, and then some places where they're breaking in a new quarterback, like Alabama, with a second-year staff that might take a step forward this year. So, and then obviously one team that thought it had a returning quarterback in Tennessee, now they have Joey Aguilar there as Nico goes out to UCLA. So I think the SEC has a chance to be really, really interesting in terms of depth. And then, I think there's the ACC is probably going to be Clemson and then a gap. And then in the Big Ten, Penn State is that team this year. And who can really keep pace with them? Is it Oregon? Is it Ohio State? How far off is Michigan? Iowa's a team that I think feels like it has a real opportunity. USC, are they able to close the gap? But I think in terms of overall depth in terms of conference championship contenders, I think the Big 12 stands alone.
Adam, one note. Is there still a moment or two when you forget who's in what conference?
You're definitely in the group of five. I think I've figured it out, with the Power Four, although it is jarring, guys. And I'm driving through downtown Chicago right now, and the fact that the Big Ten has teams in Washington State and LA and Oregon and New Jersey, and then certainly the Big 12 with teams spanning from Orlando all the way out to Arizona. So it's I think we've had it for a few years. It's never going to feel fully right, but that's college football. And certainly the group of five is a trivia category unto itself.
Adam, what do you think about, you mentioned the ACC, that's Clemson and then a gap, but Miami has done a lot. Have they done enough to make up for the loss of Cam Ward, who was he was the flashpoint for everything last year?
No, absolutely. And again, adding a guy like Carson Beck, people have, he's a lightning rod type of player. A lot of people have opinions about him as a player off the field and so forth, but we forget how good he was in 2023 and how we viewed him going into the 2024 season as the top guy on a lot of NFL draft boards. And I think if he can be healthy, that position shouldn't really fall off much with him as a starter. And then we'll see if they have done enough around him, offensive line wise, wide receivers. They lose a lot of receivers from last year's team. And then defensively, they just weren't good enough. That's why they didn't beat Syracuse. That's why they didn't get to the ACC championship game, and ultimately why they fell short of the college football playoff. I really like the defensive coordinator hire that Mario Cristobal made, and Corey Heatherman may not be a guy that people know about, but did a great job at Minnesota, was at James Madison with Kurt Signetti and all those coaches that were part of last year's playoff run there for the Hoosiers. I think he's a guy that with his mentality can really harness some of the talent that they have on that side of the ball. But, again, it's the team that you just hesitate to buy into because, yes, they have talent. Mario will always have talent. Can Mario translate that talent into its potential? And that's where he struggled at times.
All right, Adam, you did the 25,000 words. It won't count unless you do it with regular, like pencil and paper. The laptop and computer, it'd be a lot better. Seriously, that's a huge undertaking. I have copied it down, so at some point when I need to check, okay, what's Iowa or what is Indiana or whoever, I can go to that list and go to your article. You guys did a great job. We have Eli coming on tomorrow. Max joins us a lot on Thursdays, so we'll do the full throttle with all of you. Thank you very much for your time, and drive safely in Chicago.
We appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for having us all on, and thanks for reading. We appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Adam Rittenberg from ESPN with us on the article that they wrote, and I copied and pasted it in a